So, European Union is gearing up for war. They want to build big tanks, new jets, and fancy missiles.
Fancy missiles? No, it's fine. I'll be okay. I just need some time. Anyway, I wish you the best with your precious little sky bottle.
And now, they've got a plan to make it all happen. A really expensive one. The EU unveiled the ReArm Europe Plan, and it comes with an estimated jaw-dropping 800 billion euro price tag. It was hashed out at an emergency meeting in Brussels where the message was clear.
I'm hyperventilating, okay? I don't know if this replaces the USA, but at least missiles don't bomb my emotional stability and leave me alone in a cold bed.
And part of that plan includes a proposed 150 billion euros in loans meant to help countries buy European-made weapons together. So, where is the 150 billion euros coming from? Well, the EU is borrowing it, basically taking out a massive loan. How? They're selling bonds, which are like the IOUs to investors. Then investors give the EU money. They're not doing it for free, of course. They want it back with interest. And who will buy these bonds? Big banks, investment funds, insurance companies, central banks, and even other governments.
Maybe I'll buy some. Depends if Europe says I'm handsome.
I love shopping.
But who pays all this back? In the end, EU countries, aka taxpayers, will repay the debt. That might mean higher taxes, future budget cuts, or less money for things like healthcare or social programs. How about the 650 billion euros? Where is it going to come from? Now, the chunk works differently. The EU isn't handing out money. Instead, it's telling countries,
So we are relaxing the budget rule, so spend all you want.
Are you kidding me?
normally, countries can't borrow freely, but now they can borrow more or shift money from other areas without breaking EU rules.
Oh, so now they can borrow more?
So each country will decide how to come up with the cash. They'll borrow more by selling their own bonds, they'll cut spending on things like education or infrastructure, or they'll raise taxes. Maybe not right away, but eventually. So have countries actually started doing this? Well, yeah, some already are. Germany, for example, created a 500 billion euro fund for military and economic growth. So basically borrowing big, keeping it separate from the normal budget, and slowly rolling it out over more than a decade. And they're betting that a stronger military and better infrastructure will pay off in the long run.
Are we sure this is a good idea, guys?
Yeah, we're on the good side now.
Really? And what do you call this?
Yeah, we're experimenting with vintage evil. Cool, no?
Another example is France. They're boosting defense funding to 3.5% of GDP and launched a 450 million euro defense fund that citizens can invest in. Denmark raised its spending to 3% of GDP, the highest in 50 years. And Poland is already way ahead, spending 4.7% of its GDP on defense. One more thing, the EU isn't dividing the 650 billion euros. Every country decides independently how much they're willing or able to spend. And if a country opts out, no one's going to find them. But they'll fall behind militarily, lose political influence, and maybe miss the train as Europe retools for a new era. So for example, if France boosts defense but Belgium doesn't, Belgium might rely more on France's army. But that also gives France more say in the EU military decisions. Now that the money problem is sorted out, kinda, what about the materials? What is the EU going to build all these weapons with? To simplify things, we will focus on just one tank. Europe's go-to tank, the Leopard 2.
Oh, now you want me? What happened? The fancy missile ghosted you?
A Leopard 2 weighs around 60 metric tons. But it's not just 60 tons of random stuff. It's packed with specialized metals, high-tech parts, and military-grade components. To build just one, you need about 50 tons of steel for the armor, turret, and frame. Then around 500 kilos of aluminum go into lighter parts like engine components. There's about a ton of tungsten used to toughen up the armor and make armor-piercing shells. Add 200 kilos of copper for all the wiring and electrical systems. 20 to 50 kilos of lithium for the onboard batteries and communications gear. And another 30 to 50 kilos of rare earth elements for targeting systems, sensors, and night vision. On top of that, you'll need about a ton of rubber for the wheels and tracks, and a ton of plastics and composites for interior insulation, control systems, and extra armor layers.
You really broke me down to raw materials. Not even a, hey, are you comfortable being emotionally disassembled in front of everyone? I have layers, you know? I'm more than my tungsten.
And remember, that's just one tank. Now multiply all that by thousands across Europe, And we haven't even started on planes, drones, or missiles. Here's the real kicker though. Europe does produce some of these materials, but nowhere near enough to supply a full-scale military buildup. Take steel for example. Europe makes some especially in Sweden and Germany, but it still relies on iron ore imports from places like Brazil and Canada. Aluminum, a lot of it comes from Norway and India. It used to come from Russia, but that's mostly off the table now. Tungsten, Europe has a little in Austria and Spain, but most of it, about 80% worldwide, comes from China. Copper, some is mined in Poland, but most is imported from Chile and Peru. Lithium, Europe's just starting to mine it in Portugal, but for now, it mostly comes from Australia, Chile, and Argentina, then gets refined in China. Rare earth elements, almost all refining is done in China. Sweden recently found some rare earth reserves, but it'll take years to mine and process. Rubber, nearly all of it is imported from Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam. So yes, Europe does produce some of these materials, but if it wants to build tens of thousands of military vehicles, it's going to need a lot more than what's already here. And that means relying heavily on foreign suppliers.
Hello, it's me. I was wondering if, after all these years, you'd like to meet.
Why are you not singing it?
Copyrights is the only law I respect these days.
So even with all the money in the world, EU now faces three major problems. 1. Geopolitical risk. A lot of the materials needed for tanks and weapons come from non-EU countries, and not always the friendly kind. China and Russia control key resources like tungsten, lithium, and rare earth. That's a big vulnerability, especially in a crisis. 2. Environmental damage. To get these materials, you need mining. And mining means deforestation, pollution, and carbon emissions. It's messy, it's dirty, and it directly clashes with EU's climate goals. 3. Global competition. The EU isn't the only one stockpiling. The US, China, and others are hoarding materials too. Prices are going up, supply is tightening, and getting enough for tanks and jets will only get harder.
As you can see, I'm sideways with no lube by the countries I buy batteries from. Ah well, at least hit that subscribe button. If I'm going to get screwed geopolitically, I might as well help this channel go viral while it happens.
Now comes the next question. Who's actually going to build all this? And where? Here's the thing, EU has spent decades shrinking its military industry. Factories were shut down, production was outsourced, defense budgets were cut. And now, many EU countries don't just lack tanks, they lack the factories and the skilled workers needed to build them.
Okay, so we don't have tanks, or factories, or skilled workers, but we do have a committee. And some PowerPoints. Stop attacking me.
Let's start with the factories. Building a tank or a fighter jet isn't as simple as putting together a car. You need precision machines, special assembly lines, and classified tech integration. The stuff isn't built on a regular factory floor. Companies like Rheinmetall, Nexter, Leonardo, and Saab still exist, but they're already busy running near full capacity, mostly making parts, not full systems.
Finally be relevant again. I even updated my LinkedIn.
No one remembers you.
Yeah, and everyone remembers what you did.
Guys, play nice. You're on the same team now. Please.
And according to defense experts, scaling up to full production could take 5 to 10 years. And even then, output would still be limited unless EU builds a whole lot of new infrastructure. You also need the right workers. And most of the engineers, welders, and armor experts from the Cold War days, they've either retired or moved on. Right now, defense companies in Germany and France are already reporting labor shortages, especially in the high-skill roles. And training new workers, whether it's to build weapons or operate them, takes time. Depending on the job, it could take 3 to 7 years just to get someone up to speed.
So, you still want to be the independent partner?
Yes.
Alright, let me know when you're done.
Okay, I am done.
So even with the money figured out, and even if the materials magically show up, EU still isn't ready. Because right now, the hands and machines just aren't there yet. And finally, there's one less hurdle. And this isn't about money, materials, or machines. It's politics. Rearming EU means tough choices. It could mean cutting social programs, raising taxes, or sacrificing climate goals. And not every country or every voter is on board with that. Also, after years of economic stress, inflation, and rising energy prices, people across EU are getting restless. They must start saying things like,
Oh good, more military spending.
Can't wait to get drafted and evicted in the same month.
And that frustration will definitely give more power to populist and far-right parties. In some countries, like Italy and the Netherlands, they've already taken over. And across EU, far-right parties are rising fast, especially in Germany and France. If they win more elections, they could shift military spending toward national projects, ignoring EU-level coordination, push for border militarization instead of collective defense, or even slow things down if rearmament doesn't fit their domestic agenda.
Let's make Europe great again.
When was that? The 40s, the Crusades, the Dark Ages?
Yes.
But here's the thing, whether it's far-right, centrist or left-wing, EU still isn't one voice. Some countries like Germany, Poland and France are all in on rearmament. They want to build fast and build big, but others, like Ireland, Austria and parts of Southern Europe, they're more hesitant. Some are legally neutral, others just can't afford it, and some are just indifferent. So while some governments are racing to rearm, the political mood is shifting underneath them. And that raises one last very real question. Can EU stay united long enough to actually finish what it started?
Absolutely. We are united. We have a common vision, a shared purpose. Wait, is Hungary acting up again? Also, don't you act up like Hungary and like this video.
So, what do you think? Do you think EU can actually pull this off? What happens if the threat comes before EU is ready? And finally, can EU get stronger without breaking the bank or the planet? Please let us know what you think in the comments.